Welcome to Train Freediving. You're on the sofa with Sarah and Nathan, and this is my end of the competition training vlog number 6. All of you who've been following along for the last few weeks would have known that I've been doing my training and working up to the competition that was due to be last Tuesday. Unfortunately though, I came down with a stomach virus and had to actually pull out of the competition, which was a very difficult decision, but my body on the day of the competition just wasn't able to perform the dive, and to be completely honest, I'm still struggling with this virus now, so I made the right decision to pull out, but it's never an easy decision, is it? And I was I was struggling a bit that day, wasn't I? Yeah, and it's hard because the week leading up to it, we believe now I also have this virus, so the final competition, the final peaking dives that I was doing, they didn't feel very good at all. But of course, the week before the competition, you know, I often can feel a bit nervous, so you get in your head mentally, and I was I guess I was worried that I was just making myself a little bit nervous, so I did those dives, didn't I? And I explained to you after I did the peaking dives that they didn't feel like they normally felt, and my legs felt a bit more buzzy, and mentally I just felt a bit more scared, I guess, of doing those dives, and I wasn't really sure that I was able to do that long swim with it feeling in my normal, like, really enjoyable, good quality way. So obviously we've been keeping our eye on it, and on the day of the competition, like I said, I woke up and I had a terrible time that first thing, and then both of us, instead of going to the competition, took a trip to the doctors.
It was very fun alternative to competing, for sure.
Yeah, but what do you think, Coach? What do you have to say in those sort of situations when, like, you know, like, I'm obviously an athlete that you're looking after, and what did you have to say, and what do you think about it?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I think the first thing is just, like, whether you're coaching someone or you're training yourself, it's just keeping a really close eye on dive quality. And something that I noticed with Sarah's training was that, like, when she started building up the distances up to the comp, like 120, 130, these were extremely easy dives. She was extremely fresh coming up, like pink lips, 2 recovery breaths, and ready to go. And then that week that you got sick, you actually, well, when we first started noticing some symptoms, she decided not to do a dive because she wasn't in the mood to do it. Then the next time we did it anyway, so she did 140, and it went well enough, but you could already tell that there was, like, technical issues starting on the lap from 90 to 120. Her lips were quite blue on the 140.
And this is a dive that I did in competition, you know, 4 or 5 months ago, completely fine. And it's a dive that I repeated a couple of times. It just didn't feel good. I didn't feel right in my body.
Yeah. I just think, like, sometimes when you see these sudden changes in dive quality without really, like, to be honest, 130 to 140 isn't a massive difference for you at this point, and you wouldn't expect to see such a significant change, considering, of course, how all the other training went. So it was very clear to both of us that there was something wrong, and we weren't sure what it is, or what it was. And then, obviously, like, the worst day ended up being the day of the competition, where you woke up, like, quite nauseous, really upset stomach, not feeling well at all. And for one, then it's, number one, it's super clear that there was something wrong. 2, when we went to the doctor, we actually, like, Sarah had very low blood pressure, which, if you're not sure how that would affect freediving, it increases your blackout risk a lot. Obviously, if your heart can't pump the blood to your brain, once you're hypoxic, this is a big problem. So if we had dove, the likelihood of a blackout on a distance that she should have been able to do clean would have been actually very high. And I think the last thing, which is just like, obviously we had to have quite a long conversation about it, because like the athlete in Sarah and the coach in me who wants the best for her and wants to like produce and achieve the best performances, we both really wanted to do it anyway. Like Sarah wanted to dive, she felt like she did all this training to go. I was like, well, we did all this work and it's amazing to get that result, and I want to see that the training that I gave to her was able to give the result. But the reality is, and in the end, we made the right decision, which is not competing, not just seeing how things go when you're not feeling right, when you're sick, because obviously it's like a recipe for a disaster. And I think the thing that we both realized is like, Sarah's not a professional athlete. She's doing this for fun. No one's paying her to get a dynamic ranking on record this year. So if we have to wait to the next comp, or if we say we just did the training and then the only thing missing is the final result, it's that is so much of a better decision for her, and literally for probably 99% of freedivers out there. If it comes to the point where you have to dive when you're sick, when you're really not feeling well, when you have a real, like, an actual physical problem with your health, it's not worth it.
No.
Like, taking that risk is just not worth it. All you're going to do is have either a really bad dive or an accident, and then that's going to create mental barriers, which are going to be so much harder to overcome in the future.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about mental barriers, and I think it's important. And I woke up that morning and I thought, really, what is the kindest thing that I can do for myself? Is it to force myself off the toilet, crawl to the competition, like run back and forth to the toilet waiting for my dive before I do my warm-up, force myself to do a dive that I'm really not sure that I can even do, or for just some way of proving that my training was effective, or is it better that I do the responsible grown-up thing, go to the doctors, look after myself, have a lot of rest, drink lots of fluids, and recognise that this training cycle was one of the best that I've ever done, actually, and I got so much out of it, and we really ironed out those kind of extra special things this time, to do with my hypoxia, and to kind of really make sure that my peaking phase was on point, and actually at every phase and every stage I really enjoyed it, and as I've said before on these vlogs, I love training. I absolutely love it. It's my 2 days a week off from work where I show up at the pool and get to kind of challenge myself in a new way and just have fun in the water. So of course the competition for me is always like the end goal, because it keeps me motivated sometimes, when I'm having a bit of a lazy day and I just want to laze around in bed, this gets me in the pool, it gets me having that mindful time that's a huge benefit to me. So the competition for me is that it's that kind of end motivator that keeps me going through my training, but it's the training that I love. And as Nathan said, I'm not getting paid to do this competition. So at the point where I'm, making myself feel bad or saying, oh, you let yourself down for doing this, that's not the case. And if anything, I would have let myself down if I'd made myself go. So I feel good about it, and I feel good that we can start another training cycle later on in the year, and I don't have any, like Nathan said, mental barriers around a dive that potentially could have gone terribly wrong. So I feel good about it, but I'm sorry I couldn't deliver you a better
news,
better story. But I think this story in and of itself is a kind of common one, and actually you can't predict these things, and sometimes you just have to roll with the punches, and shit happens, literally. So I think that's everything from my side.
I think just a final thing to say, and to really make it clear why it's so important to only do these dives if you're in the right physical condition, and I mean health-wise, if you're not sick, if you're not overtrained, if you're not burnt out, if you've done everything correctly, then it's safe to do them. Then you should go do them. If you actually have a real problem, like an injury, an illness, a virus, or anything like that, the way I always looked at it, and the more you learn about how training works, the more clear this becomes. The final performances, like the last 2 to 3 maximum swims, long swims, deep dives, match statics that you do in a training cycle, are just a formality. At this point, there's nothing you can do. You cannot try harder, you cannot focus harder and just magically pull out a really impressive performance out of the bag. The performance that you're going to get is a product of the training that you did, and at that point it kind of just happens by itself.
Or natural talent.
Yeah, well, of course, if you have crazy amounts of natural talent,
you might be able to pull something out of the
you
bag.
can pull something out of the hat.
But most of us aren't that lucky, so good for you.
Yeah, so for like 99% of freedivers,
we have to train.
The result that you get is only a product or a byproduct of all the training. So for me, like what I, as the coach, for example, I saw so many improvements in Sarah's diving. Her technique improved. The consistency of her technique through an entire dive or through an entire training session improved. We basically like completely removed hypoxia on dives that were like 130 plus in training, obviously excluding the dives where she was actually fighting the virus. But for me, all of the training suggested there was only pure evidence that she could have done the 155 to 160 dive in proper health had we done it. So missing it for me as the coach isn't a loss. Like, I know that you made all the improvements, you just didn't get to show it. But then the next time we train, we'll actually be able to like leapfrog the distance and go straight for 165 to 175. And like I said, had you done the dive and had an accident, then we would have just created mental barriers, and then the next time we would have just had to repeat whichever distance she had the accident on to remove the mental barrier. So it was just, overall, it was a much better decision, and I think for anyone out there, trying to be as responsible as possible and not ruining all the training that you did by pushing yourself through an illness or through like any other type of external issue that you can't control.
Yeah, that's it really. It's just like, responsible is one thing, but another word is just being kind, you know, and I think we all forget to just be bloody kind to ourselves and realise that we don't have to, you know, sometimes you have to push through, like, you know, maybe if you're a little bit more nervous and you have to show yourself that you're capable, you know, but you should never push through, like Nathan says, injury, you know, sickness, any of those things. So I think, just be kind, and of course when you're ill it's not easy to be kind mentally either, but just try and remind yourself that, you know, you've done the work, you've done great training, and it's all there ready for when you want to bring it next time, and I believe that, and I know it's true. So so we'll see you the next time around, and thank you so much for watching and following this journey. And I'd be really interested to hear if any of you guys have tried to do a competition or shown up for a PB and just felt awful and decided not to do it too, because that would be great. Bye for now.